Bianca Michelle Devins was born on October 2nd, 2001, in Utica, New York, a small city nestled between Albany and Syracuse, the kind of town where neighborhoods blur into each other and everyone's been in someone else's yearbook. Bianca grew up with her mother, Kim Devins, her stepfather, and her younger sister, Olivia. Her biological father, who struggled with addiction, was largely absent from her life. From an early age, Bianca stood out, not because she was loud or rebellious, but because she was introspective, deeply imaginative and curious. She loved music, anime, and art. Her notebooks were filled with sketches of alternative characters and dreamscapes. Her room, according to friends, was layered in soft pinks and posters of Lana Del Rey, Studio Ghibli films, and surreal fantasy artwork. But Bianca also struggled. Severe anxiety, depression, and symptoms of borderline personality disorder began surfacing during middle school. By high school, she'd experienced episodes of self-harm and was admitted to psychiatric care. She was open about her battles online, sometimes alarmingly so. Her digital diary lived on Tumblr, Discord, and later on Instagram and TikTok. She wasn't hiding from the world. She was screaming into it. And strangers, often older men, listened. Bianca found validation in internet subcultures, communities where mental illness, trauma, and alternative aesthetics were woven into an identity. Here, she could be candid about her pain and still be seen as beautiful, tragic, and mysterious. Online, she was a rising icon in the e-girl and alt community, a niche universe of soft grunge selfies, philosophical captions, and layered filters. Offline, she was trying to finish high school. She attended T.R. Proctor High School before switching to alternative education to deal with her mental health. By 17, she had just earned her diploma early and was preparing to enroll at Mohawk Valley Community College to study psychology. Her goal? To become a counselor for people who felt like her. She was bright, wounded, hopeful, complicated, and loved by her family, her tight circle of friends, and thousands of strangers who followed her every post. In May of 2019, Bianca met Brandon Andrew Clark. Brandon was 21, just 4 years older than her, but in maturity and emotional development, the gap was wide. He was from Cicero, New York, and grew up under the shadow of a violent, chaotic home. His father once held his mother at knife point in a standoff with police. Brandon carried those wounds into adulthood. On the surface, he seemed soft-spoken and attentive. He liked poetry, played with his hair when he was nervous, and knew how to charm through text. On Discord and Instagram, he quickly inserted himself into Bianca's world, liking her selfies, replying to her captions with poetic admiration, DMing with perfect understanding. She found him amusing at first. Not romantic, not serious, but safe enough to talk to. He wasn't the only one. Bianca had multiple friendships with men online. Some were closer than others. Her relationships were often emotionally charged, sometimes flirtatious, but rarely physical. She was upfront. She didn't want a boyfriend. She was still figuring herself out.
But Brandon didn't listen. Over the next 6 weeks, his messages became more intense. He started calling her every night. He inserted himself into her friend group. He drove 2 hours from Cicero to Utica just to see her for brief meetups. He gave her rides, bought her fast food, and treated every interaction like a date, even when she clarified it wasn't. When Bianca finally agreed to go to a concert with him in early July, just days after the 4th of July, he believed it was a turning point. In his mind, she was finally his. In reality, she had plans to meet another guy at the show. That night would end in blood. On July 13th, 2019, Bianca met Brandon at her house in Utica. She had made it clear that she considered him a friend. She said she wanted to go to a Nicole Dollanganger concert in New York City, an artist known for her dream pop sound and haunting lyrics, and Brandon agreed to drive. They left late in the day, and by nightfall, they had arrived in the Bronx. There, Bianca met up with a friend from Discord, a guy she had been flirting with for weeks. While she chatted and smiled with him during the show, Brandon stood nearby, watching, silent, staring. Something snapped that night. When they left the concert, Bianca and Brandon got into an argument in the car. She told him she wasn't romantically interested in him. She had met someone else. She didn't want to give mixed signals. Brandon didn't yell, he didn't pull over, he just nodded. They stopped briefly at a suburban side street near Utica on the way home, a tree-lined road at the edge of a wooded area just past Post Street. It was about 4:30 a.m. By 4:55 a.m., Bianca Devins was dead. What happened in the car was horrifying, premeditated, and cold. Using a large black-handled knife, Brandon slit Bianca's throat nearly from ear to ear. The wound was so deep and nearly decapitated her. Her windpipe and major arteries were severed. Defensive wounds on her hands showed that she had tried to fight, even as blood poured into the car seat, pooling around her chest. She died quickly, but not instantly. He sat with her as she bled out. Then he reached for his phone. He took out his camera, turned on the flash, and took photos of her corpse. He uploaded one to Discord, captioning it, "I'm sorry, Bianca." Moments later, he posted the image on Instagram stories, writing, "Here comes hell. It's redemption, right?" He included a geotag of the wooded area, and then he texted the photos to friends and to Bianca's family. By the time the sun rose over Utica on July 14th, 2019, the internet had already seen Bianca Devins' death. On Discord servers and Instagram stories, the image of her mutilated body, throat slashed, eyes open, blood soaking the seat beneath her, was being shared, reposted, and screenshotted. What began as morbid curiosity quickly exploded into viral chaos. Many didn't believe it was real. Others did and started calling 911. Meanwhile, Brandon wasn't running. He was still on the scene, sitting near Bianca's body staged in the back of his black SUV on a desolate dead-end street near Boilermaker Road, just a few blocks from his own apartment. He'd placed a green tarp over her partially to cover her, but mostly to stage her for photos.
When the calls started flooding into Utica police, they weren't just about a suspicious car. They were about a murdered girl, a selfie, and a man who claimed he was going to kill himself next. Several tipsters named Brandon Clark directly, while others sent officers the disturbing screenshots they had seen online. By 7:20 a.m., police had located the SUV. Brandon was standing next to the vehicle with his phone in one hand, a knife in the other. As officers approached, he pulled out a box cutter and began slashing his own throat in front of them. He slashed once, twice. Blood poured down his chest. He then lay down on a tarp beside Bianca's corpse and pulled out his phone, aiming the camera at himself. The officers drew their guns. Brandon, covered in his own blood and hers, told them not to come closer. But they did. They tackled him, took the knife, and called EMS. He was still alive. Barely. When officers pulled back the tarp in the back seat, the reality of what had happened hit them like a freight train. Bianca Devins lay lifeless, head tilted, her neck nearly severed. Her pink anime concert outfit was soaked red. She had been dead for hours. The SUV was immediately secured as a crime scene. Inside, investigators found the murder weapon, a long serrated knife stained with blood, Brandon's cell phone, which had been used to take and upload photos of Bianca's body, a selfie stick suggesting he had staged some of the shots, a handwritten note with phrases like, "I'm sorry," and "I couldn't let her go." Outside the vehicle, they marked the exact location of each blood droplet, footprint, and tire track. The crime scene was preserved with precision. The autopsy, conducted later that day, revealed the sheer brutality of Bianca's final moments. She had been slashed across the neck, the wound so deep it reached her spinal cord. The cut had been done from the front, deliberate, powerful, and clean. She also had bruises on her arms, suggesting a brief struggle before the fatal injury.
Toxicology found no drugs or alcohol in her system. Digital forensics began immediately. Detectives pulled every text, photo, Discord message, and Instagram post from Brandon's phone. A disturbing pattern emerged. He had Googled how to incapacitate someone and how to kill quickly 2 days earlier. He had saved screenshots of Bianca with other men, fixating on perceived betrayal. In his Notes app, he had drafted a goodbye message, time-stamped 2:47 a.m., just an hour before the murder. On Discord, his username matched that of the person who uploaded the death photo. Everything pointed to premeditation. Police recovered messages between Bianca and Brandon from the drive home after the concert. The chat revealed that she had told him he was not interested romantically, expressed frustration that he had been possessive at the show, asked him to respect her boundaries. His tone had shifted from hurt to ominous. At 3:45 a.m., Brandon sent a message to a Discord friend. "She used me. This is it. I'll show them what happens." At 5:55 a.m., he posted the photo. He even changed his Instagram bio to read 10/6/1997, 7/14/2019. "Just know that I'm sorry."
Brandon carefully constructed a narrative in which he was the victim, romantically wronged and emotionally discarded, but investigators saw through it. This wasn't about love, it was about control. Brandon Clark survived his suicide attempt and was rushed to St. Elizabeth Medical Center under police guard. For 2 days, he drifted in and out of consciousness, sedated and stitched. The moment he was medically stable enough to speak, detectives moved in. The interrogation began with soft, clinical tones. They needed a confession. But Brandon wasn't resistant. He admitted almost everything with calm, matter-of-fact clarity. He told them he had been planning it for about a week. He brought the knife on purpose in case things went wrong. He felt disrespected when she flirted with another guy. After the murder, he felt relieved. When asked why he took the photos and uploaded them, he simply said, quote, "I wanted people to see what she did," end quote. He was cold, detached, even proud. As Brandon Clark lay recovering in a hospital room under armed guard, the Oneida County District Attorney's Office was already at work, assembling a prosecution strategy unlike any the county had ever seen. The case had certain advantages from the start. There was no missing person investigation, no mystery as to who committed the crime. Brandon had confessed. The murder weapon had been recovered at the scene and the victim's blood was on it. The crime scene was pristine and preserved. There was an avalanche of digital evidence, photographs, social media posts, GPS trails, Google searches, and more. But this wasn't going to be an open and shut case. The challenge wasn't proving that Brandon had killed Bianca, it was proving why. Because if the defense could paint him as a man who snapped in a moment of temporary mental break, grief-stricken, remorseful, suicidal, they might angle for manslaughter or a lesser murder charge. To prosecutors, that was unacceptable. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a pre-planned execution of a young girl by a man who couldn't stand losing control. To hammer that point home, they began carefully mapping out every moment of premeditation, every internet search, every text, every digital footprint. Investigators, along with the Oneida County District Attorney's Office digital forensics team, built a second-by-second timeline of Brandon's actions on the night of the murder. They reconstructed the moment he picked Bianca up in Utica, cell tower pings placing him in the Bronx at the time of the concert, geolocation tags on photos and text, surveillance footage from a gas station showing the two getting snacks just hours before the murder. The route back to Utica recorded on Google Maps history and the vehicle's onboard GPS. But what truly chilled prosecutors were the timestamps on his phone. 2:36 a.m., he saved a photo of Bianca standing near another man at the concert. 3:12 a.m., he searched, quote, "how to quietly kill someone" on his phone's browser. 3:58 a.m., a draft suicide note was updated in his Notes app. 4:30 a.m., the car stops at the remote road in Utica. 4:55 a.m., a photo of Bianca's corpse is posted to Discord. 5 a.m., Brandon updates his Instagram bio with a death message. There was no impulsive moment, no snap.
This was a sequence of decisions made with cold clarity.
To bolster their argument, prosecutors ordered a forensic psychological evaluation of Brandon Clark, not to prove mental illness, but to probe his mindset. The results were sobering. Brandon didn't suffer from schizophrenia, bipolar disorder, or any form of psychosis. He was lucid, cognitively aware, emotionally intact, but the profile painted him as a narcissist with emerging antisocial tendencies, someone who craved attention, validation, and control. His upbringing, particularly the trauma of witnessing domestic violence, may have shaped his worldview, but it didn't justify his actions. What alarmed psychologists most was his post-murder behavior. After taking Bianca's life, he staged her body, posed for photos, and publicized the act. His intent wasn't escape, it was visibility. In his interrogation, he showed no signs of remorse. His words weren't, "I'm sorry I did this," but "I'm sorry she made me feel this way." Prosecutors knew they couldn't allow any room for sympathy. As legal preparations continued, the case took on a life of its own online. Photos of Bianca's death continued to circulate across Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Discord. Content moderators scrambled to remove them, but they reappeared constantly, reposted by trolls, bots, and morbid voyeurs. Some users celebrated the murder, blaming Bianca for her own death. Others created memorial pages trying to honor her memory. The Devins family was forced to see their daughter's death turned into digital spectacle. Kim Devins, Bianca's mother, pleaded with platforms to take stronger action to stop the images from resurfacing every time someone typed Bianca's name. This digital aftermath would later become a key component of public interest in the case. Not just a murder, but what followed it. Prosecutors anticipated this and planned to use Brandon's online actions in court as evidence of intent and emotional detachment. By early February 2020, the court was ready to begin the pretrial phase. Brandon Clark had recovered fully from his self-inflicted injuries and was transferred to the Oneida County Jail. The formal charge, second-degree murder. The prosecution, however, was preparing to argue for a possible elevation to first-degree murder based on aggravating factors, specifically premeditation and the public exploitation of the crime. The defense filed motions to suppress portions of Brandon's digital trail, arguing that some of the Discord posts and Instagram captions were taken out of context or didn't reflect his true state of mind. The prosecution countered with timestamps, phone data, and psychological reports. The judge allowed most digital evidence to stand. Brandon's court-appointed attorney began discussions of a plea deal, but prosecutors were torn. A plea deal would spare Bianca's family the agony of a trial and the public airing of graphic photos, but it would also mean Brandon might never face a full jury. The Devins family, after much deliberation, supported the idea only if he received the maximum sentence. On February 10, 2020, Brandon Clark formally pled guilty to second-degree murder. In the courtroom, he read a carefully worded statement saying he didn't want to put Bianca's family through a trial and took full responsibility. But those close to the case believed his remorse was strategic, not sincere.
On March 16, 2020, the courtroom in Oneida County was packed. Despite Brandon Clark's guilty plea, the sentencing hearing was never going to be simple. There were impact statements to be read, a community still raw from grief, and a young girl whose death had been seen by millions around the world. The courtroom was silent when the judge entered, but tension hung heavy in the air. Brandon Clark, now 22, was led into the courtroom in shackles. His hair had grown out, his face pale and expressionless. Gone were the social media masks and online theatrics. The man in the orange jumpsuit was simply quiet, small, unrecognizable from the monster who had once bragged about what he'd done. The prosecution laid out the full horror once again for the record. The deliberate planning of the murder, the cold execution of Bianca, the calculated act of uploading her death photo for the world to see, his repeated efforts to center himself in the aftermath, a false narrative of heartbreak framed around toxic male entitlement. Then came the victim impact statements. Bianca's mother stood first. Her voice trembled as she described the moment she saw the photo online, before she even knew her daughter was dead. She had called Bianca's phone, no answer. She texted, nothing. She had tried to convince herself it was a hoax, a cruel joke. She told the court,
"My daughter's last moments were seen by strangers before I even knew she was gone." Her words echoed across the room. Every sentence landed like a blow. Bianca's sister spoke next, describing how the family could never Google her name again without finding horror. Her grandfather said he no longer believed in justice because justice wouldn't bring her back. Every word carved through the quiet. When it was his turn, Brandon Clark stood slowly. He spoke without notes. He said he had, quote, no excuse for what he did, that he had, quote, loved Bianca and didn't understand how things went so wrong, that he wished he could go back, that he saw the pain he caused. But to those in the courtroom, his words rang hollow. There was no trembling, no emotion, just a robotic cadence, rehearsed and clinical. Prosecutors had heard it before. Brandon wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he no longer had control over how the world viewed him. He ended with, quote, "I know I can't fix what I did, but I hope this is the start of trying," end quote. It wasn't. The judge didn't waste time. Brandon Clark was sentenced to 25 years to life in prison, the maximum under New York law for second-degree murder. No possibility of parole before 25 years, no appeals were granted. The courtroom didn't cheer. There was no triumph, just quiet, tears, and a mother clinging to a framed photo of her daughter, pink hair, wide smile, hopeful eyes. Today, Brandon Clark is incarcerated at the Clinton Correctional Facility in upstate New York, classified as a Level 1 violent offender. He will not be eligible for parole until at least 2045, when he is 47 years old. Any future release will require a full parole board hearing and review of psychiatric reports.
Bianca Devins is buried in Forest Hill Cemetery in Utica, just blocks from where she grew up. Her grave is often adorned with flowers, fan art, and pastel letters from strangers, people who never met her, but who saw the injustice. In the years since her murder, Bianca's case has ignited debates across the country about the failure of social media moderation, the rise of incel violence and digital extremism, how vulnerable girls become trophies in the hands of manipulative men. Her mother, Kim Devins, became an advocate for online safety legislation. She worked closely with lawmakers to push for Bianca's law, which would hold platforms accountable for removing violent content more swiftly and transparently. But behind the headlines, behind the courtroom drama and the clickbait horror, remains the truth. Bianca Devins was not a symbol. She was a girl, a sister, a daughter, a life just beginning. And one man's need for control stole everything.